You have your eggnog.
I have it.
Okay,
and
good.
it's a here inside.
It does have a sippa here. With ice.
Yes. An icicle here.
So, this week's question is, how does it feel to be part of a death cult? Again.
Again? I thought we were not doing that anymore.
Well, so did I, but then Elon Musk said that you are trans, and trans people are a death cult.
Just we just are a death cult.
Well, that's what Elon Musk said, and he's rich, so obviously he's right?
So maybe what is a death cult? So maybe we should start with that. Well, mostly because, like, which part of trans has to do with death, being trans? Like, where does it even, what's the... I guess I could... Sorry, everybody. I jumped thought processes multiple times in a very short period of time.
You're okay.
But is it... I don't know, but is it that they're like, trans people are causing mass shootings or whatever, and that's why it's a death cult? Is that the thought process?
That's my understanding of the thought process, is that, yes. So
Oh my God.
several people have been talking about this, and it's because of the now debunked idea that the shooter of Charlie Kirk was in a relationship with a trans woman.
Right.
So that has been disproven to the best of my knowledge with the crazy text messages.
How many levels of...
Hang on. So they were blaming trans people for being a death cult because they believed that the shooter of Charlie Kirk was shooting Charlie Kirk because Charlie Kirk did not like trans people. So, obviously, trans people are terrorists. Trans people desire the death of anybody who does not believe that transness is inherently good. That's my understanding.
Yeah. Yep.
And my guess is that they called it a cult because there is an overriding coherence amongst trans people in their mind that unites them into one front.
Right.
So how does it feel to be part of a death cult?
Well, pretty much like I did yesterday. Is it like having a birthday? No. Mostly it just feels annoying that they have no idea what they're talking about. They don't know what a cult is. They don't know what being trans is. They don't know what causes people to shoot other people. Like, all of those things are just so wrong. I mean, the just kind of taking broad sweeping generalizations and applying them to a minority group is so absurd. I mean, it's the whole idea, like, as if I, as a trans girl, just know all the other trans girls, right? Like,
wait, you don't all know each other?
yeah. No. Gonna go with no. We don't, there isn't a unimind where we all are just like, estrogen or something like that. I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe Reddit is the unimind, but that's as close as we get.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a Discord server or two.
That's you.
Okay, so I know we're supposed to be talking about cults, but let's touch for a moment, because you brought it up, on what is trans?
Oh, man.
Yeah, what qualifies as trans?
What qualifies?
Yeah. Because I feel like a lot of the people who are thinking of transness as a cult or as a unimind don't realize what transness is. And I've found lots of people don't seem to realize that non-binary people often identify as trans. So that's a starting off point. What does it mean to you to be trans?
Thanks for qualifying the means to me, because I don't have like a definition in front of me, but to me, being trans is essentially having the realization that you identify as something other than what you were identified as at birth. So, which is pretty broad. I mean, it includes non-binary people and somebody going from male to female or female to male, or and there's lots of possible subcategories, but they don't come up too often. But but it's that realization of, I mean, this isn't, I was, when I came out of the womb, they said, this is in my case, a boy. And that realization that that's not how I interact. I don't interact with the world as a boy. I don't feel like a boy, which, leads you to thinking about what is gender, right? And kind of breaking down that thought process, because it's kind of what we, gender is kind of what you make it in a lot of ways. And we have a lot of cultural preconceived notions about what gender is or should be, and and then I think depending on who you are and how you relate to the world and how you see yourself, and kind of all those things mixed together, you kind of develop an understanding of, oh, this is how I am and how I want to be and how I want to dress, and and okay, it looks different than what they said when I popped out of the womb, but I didn't really have the ability to think about it at the time, so.
So what would you say are some of the primary differences between what was assumed about your life and destiny when you popped out of the womb and what your reality actually is?
It's so many things, but a lot of it is expectations about presentation and social interactions. Like, a lot of it really is. Like, there's just a lot of assumed things. Like, oh, you're a boy, so you're going to like boy things or male things, or whatever you want to call it. And in those situations, you're going to act like a boy, and you're going to not talk as much. You're going to maybe be less creative. You're going to be, I mean, these are just things specifically that seemed to be presented to me of what was expected for boy. I don't think it's the same across any board, but you're going to have the expectation of doing the hard, dirty, gross things in all situations. You're gonna have the expectation of not doing certain things, like not wearing dresses, not wearing high heel shoes, not not being excited about dancing. I don't, and those are just examples. It would be exhaustive to go into a whole list, but and I just frequently found myself in how what I wanted inside to be on the opposite end of what was expected. Like the dancing one is a good example for me, because it was just there's this expectation societally that if you were male, dancing was something you were going to kind of stick your nose up at a little bit, and it was, you might do it occasionally to make the girls happy or to win a girl or something like that. But that's when you danced, was for those things, and not just because you wanted to and you thought it was great and beautiful and graceful, and you liked how you could show off your body while you were doing it. Those weren't things that you could do. as a boy in my world growing up. But those were the things I wanted to do. That's why I wanted to dance. All of those things. I wanted to be graceful. I wanted to look beautiful. I wanted to, they would even say things like, "Oh," like I was part of a worship dance class in my church, and there were like maybe at most the point we had the most men. There were 4, I think it was, 2 older ones and 2 younger ones if you include me, and and then at like one point they like decided to try and like siphon off us males into like a little side class. And and when they did that, they literally would change the language from trying to be graceful to this is a strong movement and we're being handsome, and like and it's not a big deal, but it was just from my perspective not what I was shooting for, not what I was wanting. I didn't like it didn't matter. Like I didn't see the need to have a male dancing language and a female dancing language. Because like can't I just be beautiful and graceful and enjoy this in what, especially as it was presented to me in a female way? Can't I just do it in a female way? And now I'm just like, well, there's so many things that just makes so much more sense to me to just do it in the female way, because that's what I like. I like to wear dresses. I think it's fun. It makes me happy, makes me smile when I look at myself, and that should be good enough reason.
So for anyone who may be watching this like from our old life, what would differentiate you being trans and liking to wear a dress from, for example, a drag queen who kind of wears it occasionally and is fun and that sort of thing? Because I can see the argument being, well, yeah, you like this and it's fun, but how does that make it an identity exactly?
Well, I would say that those are just like indicators, because you could just like it and it'd be fun and you could just do it for fun, like somebody who cross dresses or a drag queen or something like that, and but for me those things kind of accumulated as indicators of a deeper thing in me, where it's just like, oh, it's not just like I like those things, but it's like that's who I am. There's something. No, I mean, that's just what it is. It's who I am, that I am female. It's not just that I like some female things, but these things are coming from a place of being female. And it took quite a lot of those indicators for me to be able to like sit back and be like, oh wow, like this is real. And it wasn't just indicators. But the realization that that's how I think, that's how I see life, that's how I approach life, that's how I at least when I am being the most honest and best version of me, that's how I approach life. When the happiest version of me, to be probably even more precise, that's the perspective it comes from, is that female perspective. And so that's and it's hard to explain. It's hard to put it into words, because it's not about somebody else, it's about me and what's going on in me and myself, and I can't like give you all of my life experiences in any short timetable. And so in a way that you would be able to be like, oh yeah, that makes sense, in the way that it makes sense to me, right? Because I can just think back on my life and recognize so many things, and recognize the voices in my head and in my heart, and I can do those things, and I assume you can too, and everybody else. But it's really hard to explain those things to other people, because it's really a lot of things. like it's my life, it's me, it's all of my thoughts, it's all of my emotions and feelings and experiences, and it's not just, so it's hard to pare that down to things that are explainable and anecdotal, and I try, and you've heard some of my best shots here, but um, but in the end, it's just a realization I have about myself, and like I can't make you come to the same realization about myself except to tell you about who I am. And that's all I can do. And you can believe me or not, but that's all I can do.
So putting that into context, it's very interesting that we saw your mother several weeks ago, and your mother is very familiar with this apologetics standpoint that Charlie Kirk also took, which is you
Sorry.
you pose someone an unanswerable question as a gotcha moment. You demand that they tell you something or explain something, and when they don't have a pre-recorded answer that exactly fits what you would view as like acceptable or convincing, then you're like, you have no idea what you're talking about, therefore trans is not a real thing. So what's one or two of the problems that you see with the quick explain yourself to me right now or you're wrong?
I mean, the first problem I see is just that they're already, my mother specifically is already just by doing that, she's already decided that she's not in a place where she's willing to have an actual open conversation. She's already made her decisions, she already knows what she thinks, and whatever anybody says in that moment isn't going to change her mind about anything. And so there's that. And then the gotcha question, and because the whole reason for the gotcha question is to try and put the other person in a place where they're realizing they're wrong, right? That's the hope, is to be like, oh, you don't have an answer, so you're wrong. Which is just, that's not a healthy way to have a conversation with, just asking people questions just to try and ask them gotcha questions to get them to think they're wrong, because like that's not how people work, right? Like I already, I've spent a lot of time thinking about being transgender and who I am, and so like just one question that's isn't going to change that. And really, from my perspective, that question just shuts the door to being able to have a conversation, because I'm like, oh, well, I guess she's not willing to actually have a real open conversation, and so I'm probably, in that situation, not going to try very hard to answer anyway. Even though it's my mom and I would love to, but it's not.
It's hard to come at something from a position of respect when you've been disrespected in the asking of the question.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And well, and on top of that, I've spent a lot of time explaining things to my mom specifically already, and so when it's kind of just like a revisiting of things we've already talked about, it's like, well, it doesn't seem like you're really listening or trying to understand, or so I can't just rehash the same conversation every time I see you, like that's not a relationship, that's just an awkward conversation that happens.
And that's
repeatedly.
Part of the point of the evangelical apologetics approach to things, though, is like you're not internalizing what somebody else has to say. You have your talking points, and the script is those talking points. You get somebody to say the thing that you need them to say, and then you have a talking point to go off of. but it's not a conversation, it's an argument.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and that's how they trained us to do missionary work.
Yeah.
That's
It is.
exactly what it was.
Yeah, the classes on apologetics and the classes on evangelism, that's,
Yeah.
you talk them in circles until they say the thing.
Yeah. Which is interesting to me now, working with kids with high behaviors, especially little kids, and, well, any kids. And, like, the main thing that helps kids with high behaviors that I've seen and experienced, like, the primary thing that actually helps, if anything is going to help, is having a relationship with the kids. Like, that's the thing. Like, if anything, you could have all the strategies and well documented I can't think of the word, interventions and whatever it is, but like if you don't have if nobody in the room with the kid has a relationship with the kid, nothing's gonna happen. Like it's not gonna work. And it's the same way with anything else. Like if I really wanted to be a missionary, which for the record I really don't, but like if that was a goal I still had, like it was for most of my life, like it should start with building relationships with people is really where it should start. And you can't, instead of a talking point list. and like I was in missionary classes where they might even have said that, but it was really confusing because you still have this talking point list you had to get through, and so it was confusing to try to make relationships.
Yeah, because the relationship was just like, you're trying to get to the peanut butter of the talking points. The relationship is just the toast that you spread it on. Like, it's,
right.
It's there somehow, but you're not entirely sure why, and that's really not the point, because if you really like peanut butter, that's like what you're going for, and it just feels a little weird to eat it off a spoon.
Yeah. Well, and like just relationship can't be a one-step part of a process.
Right.
Like, I mean.
But it was. And,
right.
Oh, well, what did they call that class? Relationship and discipleship or something?
Oh, with the.
Yes.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I can't remember what it's called.
Conversation.
Something like that.
Yeah, basically relationship and discipleship. I'm sure if any of the MBI people are listening, they'll be able to tell us in the comments.
Yeah. I think it was Introduction to Discipleship. I think that's what it was. I think
you're right. Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. But yeah, you like build but a relationship isn't a one conversation. It isn't, like you couldn't, there's no way you could say, in order to build a relationship, you're going to have 5 conversations with somebody, or, something like that.
Oh, but we did.
I know.
There were papers on 5 conversations.
It doesn't actually work in real life. Like, it's totally, again, from working with kids, like sometimes, for me, and it depends on the person. Like, there's a guy I work with, and he seems to get to know kids really fast, really well. And he just has that, kind of bubbly, fun personality where he can connect with people super fast. But like for me, it takes me a long time usually to build relationships with kids at work. And it's just like a slow process of running into them in the hallways and, being like, hey, good morning, or give them a high five, and, and a bunch of little things like that. And, finding inside jokes about something we read in a book, or, and it takes a long time for those things, again, at least for me, to find and develop and realize that, are a part of my relationship with a student. I think it does for them too. And even then, if they get dysregulated, a lot of that goes out the window because they're not thinking clearly. But
do you feel like an apologetics style conversation allows for regulation, or is it designed to make you feel dysregulated? And I admit
that's a good point.
I admit that's a leading question.
Yeah.
That's very much a leading question.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's the point of the gotcha statements / questions, is that like it's designed to like now I've thrown him off his rhythm, to quote John Mulaney. Like, you're supposed to get somebody on the defensive so hard that they forget and shut down.
Yeah.
And then you can tell them what you think.
Yeah.
Like, in the case of the conversation that we're talking about, that seems like a red flag. You don't have a quick response to me. Therefore, you're wrong. Therefore, your identity is wrong.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, my mom asked me what. asked me. What was it? I don't remember. I thought I had it, and I don't. But it was about either my name or being trans, and just to like explain it, pretty basically. And in my head, I was thinking, first of all, I've done that. Second of all, I could do it again. I don't want to right now. It seems unnecessary and like a bad idea in this scenario. And
You mean the side of a hiking trail while everybody's waiting for you because they're about to get in the car is a bad
Yeah.
place for this conversation?
yeah,
When you haven't seen each other for like a year?
yeah. And so I kind of just didn't say anything. And she was like, "See, that's a red flag. You should be able to explain this to me right now."
But that's the evangelical view, right? Always be prepared to give an answer to anyone in defense of your faith, or die.
That's a good point. Yeah, but again, you know, it was in that moment. It was I don't know. I guess was kind of realizing how sick of all these tactics I am, and and not being willing to like go along with it, which made her very angry because that's what you're supposed to do is go along with the things and I was
She's
just
not
like, I
right
don't.
if you don't go along with the things.
Oh, right. And you know, and it was me realizing that this is what she's doing, and clearly, and you know, kind of losing any hope that there was, that you know, maybe behind the scenes she was having some realizations about what I was going through. And no, that's not what was happening, and which was sad to me, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to communicate any of that to her in a helpful way, at least not in that moment. I was not in a good spot to do that, so. But yeah, it was designed to set me on edge, make me emotional and defensive, and I don't know, the thought process seems to be that once you're defensive, you're going to be in a mindset to be receptive, which is not true, but that seems to be the thought
idea
process.
is that once you're defensive, you realize that you're wrong.
Yeah.
Which is really ironic for the apologetics mindset, being prepared to always give a defense for your faith. If defensiveness automatically means that you're wrong.
Right.
So, it's a side note, but
It's confusing.
it is confusing.
That's more about what is a cult, I think.
Yeah. Alright, I will take a fake beer from over there, if you please, and then we can go into the cult part. I got that. Thank you. Okay, so we have talked a little bit about what it is to be trans. Now, obviously that doesn't translate directly. Translate. It does not translate.
Is that a type of mice?
Yes. Yes, it's absolutely a type of mice.
It was translated mice.
Damn it. So, yes, it doesn't translate directly because your view of what being trans is, and Elon Musk saying that it's a death cult, and Trump saying that there is no more violent terrorist group than trans people, doesn't quite translate directly to the I don't feel like I'm what everyone defined me as, and I really like wearing dresses. It doesn't translate great, but that's still our intro. So let's go a little bit into the background here of what do evangelicals think a cult is?
What do evangelicals think a cult is?
Exactly, because
Oh,
we're going
man.
from Elon Musk and Donald Trump's view, which is catering to a very specific MAGA point of definition of cult, which
Yeah.
is juxtaposed against the actual definition of cult. So if you're coming from an evangelical mindset, what is a cult?
Well, I don't know. To back up to MAGA mindset of what is a cult, I would
Mhm.
say it's anything that's against MAGA.
Right.
That's kind of like, that's a cult. If it's against their way of thinking about it, then they might not, but they can define it as a cult.
Which is the evangelical definition of a cult as well. Because like when you go into the cult classes that we had in
Yeah.
Bible school, the Kingdom of the Cults book listed Catholics as a cult, Islam as a cult,
Yeah.
Latter-day Saints as a cult, anybody with a witch doctor as a cult, anybody who
Yeah.
does not believe in God
Right.
is
Atheism.
a cult. Yeah, atheism is a cult. Everything that is different from your point of view is a cult, which is the same as in MAGA, right?
That seems to be the case, as far as I can work out. Well, especially based on the Elon Musk thing and just being able to say being trans is being in a death cult. Like, you have to have a very broad definition of cults.
So what he's saying is not that you're part of a coherent group. He's saying that you're not MAGA.
Right.
So in his view, he's kind of right. Because you're not MAGA.
Yeah.
And somebody that he thinks is in the trans persuasion killed somebody at some point.
Yeah. From his, yeah.
I'm just trying to be charitable because from a MAGA view, like that actually makes sense. If you think that anybody who disagrees with you and thinks that trans people are actually human is in a cult, and then somebody that you think is affiliated with that did shoot someone, that technically, if you believe in all those things, according to that definition, does translate to what he said.
Yeah.
However,
For sure.
lots of people view evangelicalism as a cult. So, what is a cult?
I spent a lot of time thinking about that this week.
Is a cult just anybody who disagrees with you?
Well, again, I mean, apparently lots of people think that. I personally, I kind of narrowed it down to something fairly simple, and I don't know. I'll throw it out there just as a thought, but I think that a cult is any group that makes you hold ideas in cognitive dissonance. As kind of part of their system, and because it's that whole having to hold on to two opposite beliefs at the same time, and
That's a very early 2000s meme.
it is.
Yeah, well, in the Linux Ubuntu. Okay, I am a little bit of a nerd.
Deep
Okay.
cut.
And a deep cut, yes. So it wasn't that deep though. There was just a lot of us who had this meme that was like, I acknowledge your reality and substitute my own. Like, I see that you're saying a thing. I just think it's bullshit. So this is my reality. You can have yours and sit over there, and I'll have mine and sit over here with my bisegmented hard drive where I put in
Right.
open source software.
But that works for two people, right? I can think one thing, you can think one thing. That works, right? But for one person, it's tricky. I'm trying to think of a really good. Oh, I know. I was talking to a friend of mine about this week. at work, and we were talking about how people believe, or Republicans believe in Donald Trump, even though like he lies all the time and doesn't keep his promises, which you could say that about a lot of politicians, but
Yeah.
but there's this like total commitment to Donald Trump no matter what he does without any criticism or anything like that from his base. and and I had a moment of realization where I was just like, oh well, it's just like praying, right? Where like when you pray, you ask God for something, right? It's, you will go to lots of prayer meetings where they'll tell you that's not what you should do all the time, but everybody does it anyways. And so in praying, it hit me that you get trained to ask God for something and then never see that, like, and not see that come true, because a lot of times you're praying for ridiculous things. Like I saw it a lot, and like praying for people to be healed and stuff. And sometimes, like, you talk yourself into it. Like, you prayed for somebody to get sick when they had the flu and they got better. It's like, well, I mean, it's kind of natural progression of events.
You prayed for them to get sick, or you prayed for them to get better?
To get better.
Okay.
When they
you
had the
said
flu.
prayed for them to get sick and they got the flu.
Oh.
But yeah, I understand what you mean. You prayed for them to get well because they'd gotten the flu and they got better.
Right.
Which was a natural progression of events.
And so,
they have an immune system.
So that's kind of like the intro, where you can talk yourself into, oh, God healed them, right? Excuse me. But then, you pray for somebody for their broken leg to be healed. And again, like, it's a little harder with that one because they still have to go to the doctor and get a cast and get it set, and after a while it healed. And then it's like, oh, God healed him. But like, you're like, but there were a lot of doctors involved and medical instruments. And...
I cannot help bringing up the part where when you fell off the roof and were laid up and you had like 40-something screws in your foot and lots of like placement hardware and that sort of thing, there was a man who was part of our cult who came in and prayed over you for a very long time. That, I don't know if you remember this because you were drugged. He very specifically prayed that a Ziploc bag would appear at the end of the bed, and all of the hardware from your foot would have, in the morning, magically migrated from your foot into the Ziploc bag, and you would be entirely healed and be able to run a marathon. Like, that was his prayer for you.
Yeah. Well, again, I feel like you're starting to see like that full cult point, though. Like when you're starting to pray for things like that, and then it's like blatant that they don't happen, right? Like that didn't happen. I can very strongly attest. You can go take an X-ray of my foot right now. All of those bolts and whatever else is in there are still there, right? And there was definitely no Ziploc bag, and. I mean, it's a ridiculous example, and it's mostly ridiculous because it's true that happened. Somebody did that, like in real life. Asked God to take all the stuff out of my foot and put it in a Ziploc bag. But so they did that, and then it didn't happen. I'm not sure which guy you're talking about, but I assume they're still probably doing similar things to that to this day.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
I saw Instagram stories today. He is still doing very similar things. Yes.
Still doing the same thing. And that's the kind of cognitive dissonance I'm talking about with the cult. Like, so you're asking for something, not getting it, and holding in your belief system that what you did is working. My prayer is working, even though all the bolts are still in Tess's foot. Somehow, I believe that prayer works, right? For those things. That praying is a whole nother topic, but sub-note, gratitude is a good thing, but anyway. And so the connection to like the political thing with Trump was that like you're trained in this prayer thing to ask for something, not get it, ask for something, not get it, and still have respect for and belief in the person you're asking for and not getting things from, right? And it's like when I saw it in this conversation, I was like, oh my goodness, that's crazy. But like that's the training as evangelicals we got in prayer, and then that's what the politics looks like. They ask for things, they don't get it, but
God is
it's
still
just
good.
like praying. Yeah, God is still good. It's all going to work out right. He's saying the right words at the right times, for that group of people, and so that's really all he would need to keep doing, is saying the right words at the right times, just enough so that they could just be like, yeah, he still fits the idea of what we think of as being a good president, even though he's not actually doing anything, or almost nothing, or what, like.
It's so funny to me that he still fits that ideal, because I was taught in my homeschool government classes growing up that there were a lot of people who had campaign trail salvation experiences, and you should never trust somebody who does that. And that's exactly what Trump did.
Yeah.
And all of those people who were like, never trust that, are like, no, this is God's will.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think that underlies the addiction to power, that like there has to be something holding you to that cognitive dissonance, I think.
Do you feel like that's more of an addiction to power or more of a desperation to be right?
I'd say they're very similar things, or / connected things, because that being right is that feeling of power, right? I'm right, and that's a powerful feeling to be right, and then to have that feeling broadcast into national policy, or even church policy in small town church world where you're on the board or whatever. And it's a weird combination of being right and having power, and again, something has to hold you to that cognitive dissonance, because I think it's hard for humans to have cognitive dissonance. Like, it's not like, I don't think it's a natural thing to live with cognitive dissonance. It takes a lot of work, and like I've found it very freeing to live with so much less cognitive dissonance in my life. Not trying to hold on to two opposing ideas at the same time. So there's got to be something there that's holding you in that state of cognitive dissonance, and I think that right, self-righteousness, power, being right, it's a combination of those things. And there's probably maybe something else I haven't thought of. I'm not saying I have an exhaustive list of how this works, but I think those start to get at the things that hold people in a cult, hold people in that cognitive dissonance of I love everybody, but but keep out all of the Mexicans because I'm terrified of them, and if that means being a little bit mean to them, that's okay, right? So I love everybody, but my actual actions and thought processes are not coming out of that statement, I love everybody. It's coming out of a fear of other people, and but if I can hold on to being right and having that power that comes with being right, then somehow I can say both of those things at the same time. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a conversation with a guy as a pastor in Idaho. We were in Idaho, so the northern Idaho, the part of America about as far from the Mexican border as you can get, right?
Idaho Panhandle, yes.
And he comes up to me after I'd done a sermon. It must have been about love, something about love and loving people and treating them as humans, because I did quite a few sermons like that, I think. and just like, and he tells me like very, very specifically, basically all the things I just said about like, you keep talking about loving everyone and even people who are different than you and all these things, and then he goes into saying, but how can we just let people cross our borders and take over our jobs and our homes? And I'm really scared of that happening. And just this, and you know, and I think it was legitimate fear that he was talking about, right? And again, kind of bonkers fear, because like I said, we're in Idaho Panhandle, right next to Canada, like, and he's worried about Mexicans coming over the border. To, you know, like, it's not actually a real world problem for him. And yet he has this fear of it because, you know, he's been taught that that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be afraid of these people, and it's right to be afraid of these people, and it's right to try and keep these people out and kick them out and move them away and worry about them because they're scary, right? That's what he was taught, even though, again, no real world experience with this scenario, just taught that. And when presented with this concept of just deciding to radically love humans as humans, no matter what, it freaked him out, because he's like, I don't know if I can do that, which was more honest of him than probably most church people I directly encountered in my pastoring experience. That was a pretty rare moment of honesty. You know, and I was still very confused about it all the time, so I probably didn't have a very good answer. But I don't remember what my answer was at the time. But I mean, you know, now I'd be like, well, yeah, you know, like, sure, maybe it's scary, but I feel like that says something about what it takes to love people, right? Like, it takes being a little, you know, being willing to deal with some uncomfortable things, and being willing to try and figure out how two groups, or, you know, maybe in some cases just two different people, are going to be in the same space, right? It might take some love to figure that out. And it, you know, might not be actually easy, but but like that's not something this is not a challenge that's being that at least from what I experienced and saw was being held to evangelicals, because they instead of leaning into the love aspect, they were leaning into the power and fear aspect of, we're right, they're wrong, and since we're right, and they're wrong, we don't want to have anything to do with them, and it'll make us dirty and gross, and in saying those words, like, it makes it clearer to me how it was a cult. Like, that feeling and thought process of being around people different than me is going to make me dirty. It's going to make me more likely to sin. It's going to make me more likely to disobey God. It's going to make me more likely to go to hell. And so that's why, you know, and so all those thought processes just kind of naturally lead to this little bubble that we lived in for so long. It wasn't a physical bubble, but it was this bubble of beliefs that everything else is bad, what we believe is right, and we just kind of shove everything else away, ignore it, don't acknowledge it, walk away from it, and we end up with the only kind of relationship we can make with somebody out there is this step-by-step process of apologetics that we're supposed to do, and which is, you know, bullshit. It doesn't actually work, because you're not actually making a relationship with people, because one, the step-by-step process is a bad way to make a relationship with someone. And two, like, I can't be associated with those people. They're dirty, they're wrong, they're sinners, they're evil, I mean, those are real words we use to describe people outside of the church. Just wrong, right? You would just call them wrong. Which now just sounds abhorrent to me, to call somebody just wrong, right? And assume you can know that much about a person to just call them wrong. But I think that's, and that's what made it a cult, though, was we were supposed to love these people and think they were evil and wrong at the same time.
So the defining factors that made you realize that there was a cult was the fear and the cognitive dissonance. Let's go a little bit into the actual dictionary definition, essentially, of what makes a cult a cult. So there's the 4 essential components that make a set of beliefs into a cult, and it can have a very charismatic leader who demands time, attention, and sex, but it doesn't necessarily have to have that person. But a cult belief has to take control, and that control has to be over your time, it has to be over your finances, it has to be over your sexuality, and it has to be over your thoughts. So how did your cult experience take control of those things? And we'll start from the beginning, start with time. How does a cult take your time? How did it take the time of your parents, when you were younger? Because we were in this for 30 years, right? Which is a very significant amount of time. But practically speaking, from week to week, what did this look like for you? Because for me, this looked like not only had we given our entire being to God and moved across the world, and we had to be doing these things constantly. My parents would wake up at 6 o'clock every morning, and then I usually didn't see my dad. Even when he came home for dinner, he had to go out and be praying for 3 hours, because that was the time that he had to give to God. And we had to go to church every Sunday at least once. So we had to go to at least one Bible study a week. We had to go to prayer services. We had to do this, that, and the other thing. How did that look for you?
I mean, the expectation, time-wise, was that all of it was God's. If you want a charismatic leader for all of the evangelical movement, you could say God or Jesus, right? That's kind of how it works out. Then there are some actual human charismatic leaders that take roles in that, but if you want an overarching charismatic leader that is supposed to control all of the things and you devote all the things to, right? It's this God, Jesus idea. And expectation for me in my childhood and life was that, essentially all of your time was supposed to be devoted to God, at least in idea, in theory. I'll go with that, in theory. And then the reality of it was for me was similar. There was supposed the expectation of some kind of quiet time in the morning, and which there was a range of time. Your dad going 3 hours was over the top, but woo. In my circles, people talk about 15 minutes, 30 minutes. The truth is, most days I was doing really good to get to 5. I was a bad Christian, only doing 5 minutes.
They say you were. I can't even believe that you called yourself
I
Christian,
know,
honestly.
right?
That's...
See, I know it was. But I would justify that in my head, I talk to God all the time, and and spend a lot of time doing scripture memory and stuff like that, and which was another time commitment. Like you had to spend time reading the Bible so you could get to know it, memorizing the Bible, which was usually part of going to church. It's kind of like having homework assignments from church. But then there was pretty large time commitments to going to church. Sunday it's kind of an all-day affair usually for my family. I don't know. It depends on what part of my life you're talking about, but because it did vary. But we had services in the morning. On Sundays we had services at night, and then something in the middle of the week, at least once that was church related, and usually it was more than once, but it was at least one thing in the middle of the week that was church related. Wednesday night, Tuesday night, and then oftentimes there were weekend things, activities and stuff that were church sponsored, and then you would summer camps was church camp.
Plus your Royal Rangers.
Yeah, actual camping was church related. All the social activities were church related, all of them.
Plus the homeschool.
Yeah, and and we were homeschooled, and that was a church driven decision based on the fact that if my parents' thought process was that sending our kids into the public school, they're going to be contaminated by the world, right? And we have that, you can't be out there, you'll get yucky and gross and sinful, and it's that same thought process, right? And that was I remember my parents talking about it like that. If we send them to public school, they're gonna fall into the ways of the world, and if we keep them at home, we can train them up in the way they should go, and that was the plan. Yeah. Oops. But here I am messing it all up.
Shame on you.
Can you believe it? All that homeschooling. So much work.
But that was a pretty normal commitment as far as our religion / our cult went. Was like that was that was the minimum requirement, was what you're describing.
Minimum. Yeah. Well, and then even like the school thing, the homeschool thing, even with my church, I went to a big mega church, and so they had like a whole homeschool program. So we would spend another day a week or two, again, depending on when you're talking about. For a while, it was like just Tuesdays. We'd go to church and have homeschool classes there, and then like they upped it to Tuesdays and Thursdays, or we'd go to the church and have homeschool classes there. And like all of the families we did homeschool things with we got to know them through church connections one way or another, So again, the goal was all of your time, and and it wasn't just like the goal for me; it was like for the whole family. So, I would say on average, as a family, we did pretty good meeting that goal of all of the majority of our time being devoted to Christian activities and being Christians, and not being not Christians. Like if you want to divide it that way, we were really good at it. You hardly ever watch movies that weren't made by Christians. You don't listen to music that's not Christian music, right? Like you start realizing how much time you devote to things like that, and reading books that are Christian. I probably pushed it a little with reading like the Hardy Boys and Boxcar Children, because technically those aren't Christian, right? Like Wizard of Oz series was way out there. I think they were worried about me when I was reading the Wizard of Oz series, because I was like really into it, and it's definitely not Christian.
You just liked it because there were shoes.
Yeah, shoes and magic.
Pretty well defines you. Alright, this is getting a little bit long. I
Yeah,
think
it
we're
is.
going to segment for now. We'll cover the rest of them in the next episode, but let's stop for now. Check in on those kids, make sure they're not dead.
Apparently we have a lot to say about cults.
No. Shocking.